Let me move on to my third question because I want to make sure we save some time for this question. And in scanning through your book, there's you've got something in there, the Blues Brothers Guide to Nutrition, and I just want to make sure we ask for that before we run out of time today.
Okay. Well, actually, I had a lot of fun writing that, of course. There used to be a department of food and nuts at MIT. Now, of course,
Hmm.
I somehow this department with time got to accumulate a whole lot of things like biochemical engineering, which of course was what I got my master's in. That was mostly affiliated with the departments of biology and chemical engineering. Anyway, but I did at that time attend lectures from people who were looking at clinical nutrition and the importance of certain vitamins. It may become as a shock to you, but even in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't clear. And even today, we're developing new answers for what vitamins we need to take. I mean, I don't
Yes.
think anybody was talking about acetyl-CoA way back in the 80s when I was a student. So anyway, the other lectures were on the basics, what people were beginning to discover about proteins. And I think the things that I'm most interested now, of course, are what makes an allergen. So this is one side of the immune system. On the other side, there is the question of, well, if this is an allergen, why is it that everybody can eat it? Why does everybody's immune system not react to allergenic proteins? Why I personally love peanut butter, and it was one of the staples of my diet when I was a graduate student. I used to live on peanut butter and jelly and peanut butter and Bacos and tomatoes and mayonnaise and lettuce on a sandwich. That was basically what I was living on, not having a whole lot of money. So this was while I was at MIT. So what I'm saying is I enjoy peanut butter, but as we know, we have a cousin Eric, and Eric will choke and potentially die
Yes.
if he's exposed to peanuts or even a related nut from walnut or cashew, as we learned to our great shock when he was a baby. And this allergy, one of the problems with allergies, and the reason why I wanted to take so much time in the book, the Blues Brothers was, by the way, a good way to sort of introduce the idea of you can get a protein, but it may not be the best protein for you. So, for example, in the Blues Brothers, the big tall drink of water wants a whole loaf of bread toasted, and that's all he wants for lunch. Whereas John Belushi's character is looking for uh, is looking for two whole chickens that he's going to apparently consume himself, which is just going to make him fat. On the other hand, the protein in the chicken is certainly going to be more balanced than the protein in the loaf of bread, even though
Yes.
that you can theoretically get enough protein from a loaf of bread. It's just not going to be very balanced. And
Yes.
so that gave me a way into explaining what's funny about gluten, because gluten is really a strange protein. Uh, and again, we can eat it. As I said, I was making those sandwiches on whole wheat bread at that time, probably. I hope
Which
I
is
was
high in gluten.
bread. Yeah. And I love noodles. So I can eat noodles. I can eat peanut butter. And so can 90% of the population. So this makes a problem for people who do have sensitivity to some of these proteins. So peanut allergens or gluten in the case of celiac disease, because they should not, the only real treatment for either of these diseases right now is avoidance. And avoidance is awfully hard when everybody around you is eating croissants and beautifully smelling French bread and peanut butter, as I said. But you know, peanuts are in everything. If you go to a Thai restaurant, they're in the side of
Yes, they are.
your they're everywhere. And it's not just in what you can see. Peanut protein is used in a whole lot of other applications that you may or may not be aware of. It's somewhat less now, but defatted peanut protein is one of the staples of the food industry and has been for a long time. Now, Israelis say if you just feed children I think it's called Bama. They're very addictive little protein. Well, they're covered with peanut flour, but they're actually corn puffs. So they're corn
Mhm.
puffs that are coated with peanut flour instead of cheese. So they're also vegan. And uh, again, I have to avoid these because I'm totally addicted to them. So every time I see a package, I have to say no, no, because it's really not the best food for me either, because it makes you gain weight, which was of course John's problem, John Belushi's problem in the Blues Brothers. He's a little bit on the heavy side, let's put it that way. And so people who go on, for example, a diet where they only eat protein, I think it's called the caveman diet now. It had other names in
Yes, or the
the past.
keto diet. Yes, so it's
Yeah, the
related
keto
to that.
diet,
Yes,
ketogenic diet. This can actually be quite deadly,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you really put yourself into ketosis, you're doing what diabetics have to avoid as well. So it may help you lose weight if you do it for a short time. You should probably not do it for a long time. Anyway,
Before
the
we
chapter on the
run,
Blues Brothers was to kind of explain what the concept of how proteins are made up of amino acids and how certain amino acids have different properties than others. And for example, the amino acid proline, which occurs all over the place in glutens, is very difficult to digest because it's not one of the ones. So typical proteases in your stomach will take apart something after positively charged amino acids, but there are very few prolopeptidases. So there is now an industry to supply people who have celiac disease with a prolopeptidase, so a peptidase, a protease that will cleave after proline. But the problem with that is, well, how often do you need to take it? Because it's going to be the prolopeptidase will be degraded in your stomach too. So
mhm,
it's a difficult problem to deal with. Again,
I'm just
until we have better solutions for how how we control the proteins in our diet, uh, the only way that people can manage these diseases right now is through avoidance, and avoidance is very hard. If you
well, but it's getting, but in fairness, it's getting better. I mean, I'm a big time food shopper because I'm a cook, and there are a lot of gluten-free options out there. I don't know
now
how safe they are, but yes, you can get cauliflower crust pizza, for instance, which
Yes,
avoids the
which a
gluten
lot of
issue.
these so-called cauliflower crust pizzas and so forth, one of the problems with going gluten-free is you're basically going protein-free, you know?
Hmm.
And if you look at, for example, buckwheat, it you can try and get buckwheat noodles because they do contain less gluten. But if you look at the typical buckwheat noodle, it also contains wheat flour.
Yes, it does.
Well, just to hold it together. I mean, that's one of the advantages of wheat, that it's an amazing aggregation center for your bread and whatever else.
I
So
hear you. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.